the Russian, you listen to Russian broadcasts and that sort of thing. Right toward the end of the 2 years, he was very interested in communication, and he had planned to go to a radio TV school, but he decided, well, maybe since he would be interested in being a Unitarian minister.
Okay, so you started having your children, though, back in the United States.
No, I didn't have any children then.
No, I meant you all did the 2 years in
Bavaria.
Bavaria.
Yes.
And you came back.
Yeah.
And so you had 2 children.
Yeah, I have 2 children.
And your daughter's older?
Younger.
Your daughter's younger. You had your son.
My son was first, and I took pills for years to not get pregnant, because he was in school and I was working full time.
Right.
And we didn't want the complication.
So when did you have your son? How old
well,
were you?
But the very last year, when he was writing his, what do you call it? Dissertation, we thought maybe we would try, because we were told that we had prohibited my pregnancy for 6 years, and probably it would take a long time for me to...
So you were 32 when you had your son?
Yeah, because I got pregnant the next month.
I see, right.
The very next month.
When did you first know that he was special?
That Jim was special?
No, your son.
Oh,
We're on your son.
No,
you
son.
knew Jim was special from when you first met him. I'm good. We're on your son.
Well, I didn't. The way I interpreted my son as a child was that he was extremely introverted, and my daughter was extroverted. And I thought, well, that's fine. I got one introverted and one extroverted child, and that's fine. But he was extremely introverted, and I was concerned about it. So when he was in school, they have a parents' night to come.
Sure.
And every teacher I talked to, because I was afraid he might have been picked on, bullied. And they said, no, they don't bully Bennett. They try to make friends with him, but they get no response from him.
Right.
And that's, of course, but I didn't label him anything except introverted. And I tried to, I can remember when I said to him, we moved around quite a bit when Jim had different churches. One of the churches was in Cleveland, and right across the street was the school. So I said to him, wouldn't you like to bring a friend home, Bennett? And he said to me, you don't like me, do you, Mom? You don't like me. Because I was...
Yeah, I was going to ask you whether you also did Bennett have any big reactions about having a sister? Sharing
They were
sister?
very, very close until she got to be old enough that she moved out into the world.
Right.
And he did not like that. They were very good friends. In fact, he was like her teacher. And they got along very well until she started looking out beyond the family, and he was upset about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did he show his upset?
Practically every way you can think of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she felt that he was the special person for both Jim and me, and she was not.
Oh.
She didn't get the kind of, we honored Bennett, always. He was so fast in everything he did, and he was so interesting. He started composing music. He started things way ahead of time, and we were fascinated with him. But Jim was that way, anyway. So,
Right.
but she felt left out.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of emotionally moved out of the family to find other people.
Right.
And of course,
Did you have any teachers that were concerned about Bennett?
the only ones the ones I talked to, none of them felt. They just knew that he was not responding well to other children, but he was not being bullied, and that was kind of surprising to them.
And how about did he stay in one subject, or did he do well in all of his subjects?
All of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. But he did reach out to. He liked to play bridge, and so he got some guys at the high school level that would play bridge with him, and he also liked to play cards, and that was the reaching out that he did, was to get young people to play cards with him at lunchtime and so forth.
So when it came time for college, what happened?
Well, he wanted to go. Ed, my partner, had graduated from that school, St. John's,
Mm-hmm.
and his son had also graduated from that school. And I wanted Bennett to go wherever he wanted to go, but I think he was influenced by that. I wanted him to go to the University of Maryland, where they had a special, like a college within a college,
mm-hmm.
where they took the students with the highest grades, etc. It would have been a lot smaller. St. John's was wrong for him, and soon proved to be wrong.
How soon?
Well, he got through the first year, but it was when he started the second year that right at the beginning I got the call that he probably needs a psychiatrist.
And how did he show? What were they concerned about?
Oh, they said that he was acting funny.
Mm-hmm.
He was acting funny, and he wasn't relating to the students well.
I get confused because his early teachers are not concerned about his relating to students, and he's clearly such an intellectual light that
Yeah.
you and Jim are enjoying that, and I don't get any hint that he stays in one subject. He ranges across subjects.
Pretty much.
So when he got to St. John's, which is that you can pursue reading, you can pursue the subject by reading the classics. Isn't that what the St. John's
Well,
program
you have to.
You have to.
When you go in as a freshman, you learn you learn Latin, and you do your subjects in Latin.
Right.
And the second year, you do your subjects in Greek. And
Okay.
But that wasn't a problem for Bennett,
Right.
intellectually.
Right.
But he could feel the competitive nature of St. John's.
All right.
It wasn't an ordinary school,
No, yeah.
and they were competing against each other all the time,
Gotcha.
and he just couldn't relate to that at all.
And so what kind of behavior was he doing that made them concerned?
I don't know. She said he was acting funny, and he wasn't relating to the other students.
So he came home.
Yeah.
And what did you all do?
Well, it's a good thing he did come home, and he did, because the next morning I took him to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist came out of the room 15 minutes later and said, "Your son is a classic manic depressive." Right away. Didn't need any time.
Right.
And he said he's got to go to the hospital. He's very much ready for suicide at this point. So, and you know, in those days, they kept mentally ill people in hospitals, even acute hospitals, for a long time.
Right.
And so they finally, he went to so many hospitals. But this one was the first one. And they let him out for some, I don't know why, but he immediately attempted suicide.
Mary Rose, could you back up for just a second?
Mhm.
Can you give me an idea of, and look at Elizabeth when you answer, what year about was this? That
Oh,
he
God.
was in college, if you can.
What year was he
possibly.
born? So he's going to be 20 years old. We just need, what year was he born?
I should know that.
Well,
So-
I figured you said 1926 you got married when you were 26, which would be 1952 you all got married.
And we
And
did.
then you waited 6 years.
Right. So
1958
58 is his
58
birthday.
birthday. So
Yeah.
he was probably about 20, so we're in 1978.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're in the late 70s. I just need to know for.
Right.
yeah.
No, because we're
Yeah.
because we also and we also have read so much about the history of the treatment of people that
Mhm.
we know a little bit about what you're saying, but not a lot. I
Okay.
think that first time in the hospital, do you have an idea how long he stayed in the hospital?
Long time. Over a year.
And were you invited to visit? And
Oh, sure.
Did you ever talk to the doctors? Were you ever invited to?
Always talk to the doctors.
And was Bennett there when you talked to the doctors?
No. No.
So
They-
in terms of the family,
Hmm.
do you think you were invited to be helpful in Bennett's care, or do you think you were
No.
just informed?
I don't think they informed very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't, all the hospitals he's been in, including the University of Virginia, has never been, you almost like have to force anything out of them.
Right.
Well, I did do better with nurses.
Mm-hmm.
They would give me some
And
information.
how about from Bennett? Did Bennett ever? And let's stay when he first realizes he has a serious illness. Did Bennett say to you and Jim how it was?
Jim
Did he
was dead.
accuse you? How did this change?
There was
his
no Jim
relationship?
at that point.
Oh, I didn't realize Jim had died so early.
He was 41 years old when he died.
How old was your son when Jim died?
15.
He was 15. Okay.
And an important piece of information is that Jim and Bennett were very close, very close. And Bennett wouldn't say his name, wouldn't speak about him.
Right.
And was angry, very angry for years, angry that his father had died. And because Jim had become an alcoholic since I found out after his death that he was actually also a manic depressive.
Right. And was Bennett aware of this, or was his
No.
father just a hero to him? And this is, I'm
Well,
saying in
yeah.
retrospect, you won't know.
Yeah. Well, enough of a hero so that they spent an awful lot of time together. And
And as a child, did they spend more time together, or was it the whole family? Is there
it was more Bennett and Jim.
uh-huh.
Jim would just, they would listen to operas together, and they would play Go, and they would play bridge, and they would play, and Bennett hated to lose. That was one of his characteristics. He was he was very, very competitive person. And when he lost and he felt he was losing, he just couldn't take it.
So did you, when Bennett was a child, did you ever go and ask for help about him?
No.
Yeah.
No. No.
And did Bennett think that, I mean, you say that your daughter had the idea that everybody was concentrating on Bennett until
Yeah.
she went out in the world.
Yeah.
Has she ever said in later life, talking about her childhood and your family,
Hmm.
any indication that she knew as a child that Bennett was special, that he was off the norm chart?
Well, she knew he was very introverted,
Right.
but that was it. I don't think that.
This sort of the anger at losing. She went ahead and conceded early on and wouldn't lose to him.
Well, he was older, and during the years they were close, he would always win.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was with his father would always win, and he did find a game that he could win over Jim, and he was ecstatic about that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of a sad story.
Yes, well, it's
Sad story.
But it also is a story that the two of them really understood each other, and of course, Bennett was furious when Jim died. It was an ultimate betrayal.
Yeah,
You know, of
that's right.
the closest relationship in his life. So
Right.
that's and then you hear us both asking, well, if 3 years later he went off to college,
right.
yes, all of that loss
Yeah.
would have come upon him because he was by himself then. But
Yeah, yeah.
now let's do a little on the hospitalization. So when he was in the hospital, did you think that the doctors were asking or offering help when he came home? You know, how was the
Nothing.
because by then, you know,
Nothing.
Bennett's an adult, so your rights as a parent have just dropped a lot because he's over 21 for most of this time.
Yeah,
You know, where you don't have any say so, and they can't.
right.
Even then, they can't tell you a lot. It's
Yeah,
his
they know.
privacy that's
And when
being
he came home, he would go into a very frightening. He was essentially badly depressed for about quite a long time, 6 months at least, and then he'd come out of that and he'd be sort of normal. Then he'd go into a manic, and when he was in a manic, it wasn't very long before he was psychotic. And so I would try to get him into the hospital, and they wouldn't take him. They said, has he hurt anybody? Hurt himself or anybody? No. Oh, sorry, we can't admit him. Do you know they still do that?
Oh yes, they still do that. Harmful to yourself or others, or
It's terrible. And
yeah.
he was, so finally, he got so, he would throw things around, but he never hurt anybody or touched anybody. And he never remembered his psychosis. He didn't know what he had done when he
So
was
who
psychotic.
did you find that was helpful? Did you take him home every time?
Yeah.
So who
Well,
did you
see, then I'd have to call the police, and they would come and put, you know, things on him. But they didn't take him to jail. They took him to the hospital. That was the only way he got in the hospital, was through the police.
We all learned that one. The only way to get in the hospital is either to walk naked down the street or get the police involved.
I tell you. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
You can go back there in your mind. Let's put you back in 1978 when you got that first diagnosis.
Yes.
What was going on in your life, professionally and personally, at that time? And think about anything that might have changed for you after that phone call.
I was trying to remember when it was 2 years after Jim died. He died in 73.
You can look at Elizabeth when you're answering, just so that it's
Oh, okay.
visually consistent. Sorry, I know it's confusing.
He died in 73, and 2 years later, I met Dr. Edward Fries, and who was a cardiology researcher. And we, I was looking for, he came to our church. He's Jewish, but he came to our church looking for a woman. He thought he could find kind of woman he would be interested in, better in a Unitarian than in a Jewish.
I'm sorry, I want to go to church and find a man. Go ahead, though. I'm sorry. That's a great statement. You just came to church to find a woman.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
But I didn't know that. I
Right.
would not have liked that. But anyway, so I was introduced to him. I was downstairs putting up my social action table, and brought him down from CC&C, Coffee Conversation and Controversy. That was our between services program, and introduced me to him. And I asked him if he had any, and I did this with every new person. Did he have anybody did he know anybody here? No. Did he have anybody to sit with at church? No. Well, would he like to join me? Yes. So, as we were talking, I found out that he was in the medical field, you know, and I was looking for a job because I was unhappy where I was, and I thought would he give me some contacts he was at the Veterans Hospital in the district. He did most of his research work there. He was also had other responsibilities at Georgetown University. But anyway, so I gave him my phone number, and he called me and told me who I should, contact. And then he said to me, he said, do you think you could go out with me Friday night for dinner? And my God. And I hesitated. Going out with a man 2 years after Jim had died, I thought that. But then I thought, I really liked him. So I said I would. And that was the beginning of 30 years.
So
30 years.
Yes, 30 years.
Yeah.
And Bennett is off at college at this time, or Bennett is at home? Does he see you starting to date, or does he come
Well,
home from
neither
college and
neither
discover
of
you're
my
dating?
neither of my children liked Jim at all. And liked Ed. Neither of them liked him, and said so. And it said he's too. What do we call it? When a man is always in charge, he's
Domineering.
too domineering. And so I said to them, I said, you two seem to have a problem, but it's not my problem. So I didn't let them influence
Right.
me at all.
And
Yeah.
where is Bennett living at this time when
At
you all
home.
start dating?
At home.
He was still in high school.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And when Bennett went to the hospital that first time, did he come back home again?
Yeah.
Did he always return home? Or
He
did ever
always
get-
returned home.
Ah.
But and Ed also had he was in, what do they call that, where you're clinically depressed. You're not bipolar, you're
Right.
unipolar.
Yeah.
He was unipolar,
Right.
and he had been in extreme long depressions, and but as soon as they found out about lithium, his doctor gave him lithium, and it worked for him. He never was depressed again.
And what did Ed think about Bennett and
Well,
his
he was concerned about Bennett.
mania and depression?
Yeah, he was concerned about Bennett. He tried to give all the support he could. But I would never marry him or have him brought into the family. I wouldn't do that to any man. So we never married. We dated for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked being, he liked having he was also kind of introverted. And he liked having
His own place.
his own place, right?
Right.
But we got along very well, and But I think I didn't give my children enough attention because after Jim died, I had to be the breadwinner. And I got my first job at Miter Corporation, and it wasn't very long that I just hated it there, because there was a lot of, what do you call it? It wasn't equal, you know, women weren't treated equally.
Mm.
So I found another job where I felt much happier. But at the time I was at Miter, they did pay for my education. I had had 2 years of college, and I wanted to. I thought I could do better for my children if I had a degree. So I went back to school evenings and weekends, and my children didn't have me.
Right.
I would provide their meals, and then I even went on and got my master's.
So did your daughter have to take care of Bennett when he?
Well, they took care of each other, I guess. I mean, she wasn't there that much. She wasn't there that much. When he was, I remember the day that he was, the third time he tried suicide. He lay down in front of the train tracks, but instead of across where he would have been killed, he got that.
Stayed in the middle.
Stayed in the middle,
And the train went over him.
right, yeah.
And that was after he had come home from college that he did these
Yeah,
suicide attempts?
mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
So he never made suicide attempts before he went to college. The first time you realized he had manic depression was the
Right.
year after.
Right,
He'd been in college
Right.
for a year.
yeah. So, but he had been in the hospital. When he was diagnosed, he was put in the hospital right away.
Right.
And then after quite a long time, he was let out, and he came home, and then he started his first suicide, which didn't work. And so he was put in the hospital again for a long period of time because he was still suicidal.
Harmful to himself.
Yeah, yeah. And he stayed there a long time. And finally they let him out, and then he tried suicide again.
And did you go? You went to visit him in the hospital.
Always.
And
Yeah.
and
He hated it. He hated everything about the hospital.
Right.
He didn't like. He thought. He said that he wasn't getting any treatment of any kind. He was just being, just there, and he hated it. He hated all of the different things they do in hospitals.
What did you think of the hospital?
I didn't know what kind of treatment he should be getting. I thought they had a good. He just responded badly to everything they did. All the group
Right.
things they did.
Yeah, and that's the late 70s, so they had a lot of activities too. They
Yeah,
had a lot of
and he hated all of it.
pottery and
He hated that. He hated it all, every bit of it. And so, after the train situation, he was put in a state hospital because I had run out of my insurance. I had spent thousands on Bennett. I no longer had any insurance left. So he went to the state hospital, and that was worse.
right.
But he still hated it. So finally, just before that, he had gone to, I'm getting a little mixed up, just before that he had gone to I still had my insurance at that point, and he had gone to a very famous psychiatric hospital in Baltimore, and I can't think of the name of it.
Was it Hopkins? Or
No.
It's the National Institute of...
No,
that's in D.C.
no.
Never mind, sorry.
Rieger, I think. But yeah.
Anyway, they kept him for much longer than anybody else had. And finally, I said to them, every time I asked him, can he come, when can he come home? And they said, he's a suicide risk, and we can't let him out. And then I thought, well, we can't put Bennett we can't put him in jail for the rest of his life. And he's been there, and he's been in the hospital for so long, and so I signed him out.
Oh.
Yeah, I signed him out. And that was when he did the train thing.
Before that or after that?
After I finally got him out against their wishes. And
right.
so, there was so much going on all the time. This hospital thing. It was, I never felt that that they, in fact, it was their policy not to involve themselves with the parents.
Right.
They didn't do it, and they didn't. They were not.
Would Bennett have let them?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is your daughter going to visit him as well in this time? Quite often. So do the two of you have conversations about what would be best for Bennett?
I don't think she was into that sort of thing at that time. I remember the morning when she was in the process of running away all the time. She hated the school she was in, and she refused to go, and so she ran away 3 times. And so I had that to handle as well as Bennett.
And how old is she during this time? She's 14, 15, or she's...
Yeah, Bennett was about 20-something. She should have been in high school.
Right.
Yeah, that age. And so I remember the morning I woke up and Bennett had just attempted suicide and Alda had just run away again. And I stood in the kitchen and I just laughed. It was not I just completely impossible situation. Right. But she did let me know where she was. But she'd always take a telephone that I couldn't trace her. But she would come back. Mm-hmm. But she finally found herself a school that would take her for despite her problems, and it was a Montgomery County school for disturbed teenagers.
And she found it?
She found it. And they told her, well, give us, have your whatever they call them. Transcript. Have that brought to us. And when they read about her, she was also very smart. And she was always did good work. After her father died, everything went down for her. And then her brother was trying to commit suicide, and it was a really bad time for her. And so that school saved her life.
Right.
Yeah. And in fact, the director of the school took to her right away. He was like her father, almost. And she found her college all by herself.
And what college did she find?
Evergreen State College.
Oh, she went to Evergreen.
Yeah, she found that herself.
Right.
So, but she and her brother weren't in any way communicating.
Right. So you and she, though, if you went with her, you all went to the hospital together, the conversation you had afterwards was not about how you could be helpful or that Bennett wanted to leave so badly.
Well, yeah, we talked about those things,
Yeah.
but we didn't know. It didn't occur to me at that time to sign him out against.
Well, and then when you signed him out and he laid down under the train tracks,
Yeah,
you must have said, well, I can't do that again.
right.
Yeah. When,
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
uh-huh.
Pretty awful. Those
Right.
days were difficult.
Right.
And
So were you, when you signed him out, were you able to go to work and do your
Yeah.
day and do your week, or how did your day-to-day life work
it was.
when he was home with you at that point? And again, address your answer to Elizabeth if you don't.
Yeah. Well, I must say, it was difficult to. I went to work every day, and I did what I was supposed to do. But my mind was on Bennett and Alda, one running away, the other one,
Mm-hmm.
you know, didn't know what was going to happen with him. So, bad things was a very hard time.
And when Bennett would come home, would you have it, he would take care of himself at your house and you would go off to work? I mean,
That's
did you-
right. But he wasn't home that much. He would be home just a short time, and then he'd be trying suicide again. So then he was back in the hospital.
Right.
I mean, you know, it was really, really, really tough.
And there at the time, I guess, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Were there any services that, other than hospitalization, like
No.
in-home services,
No.
Medicaid, anything like that?
Nothing.
There was nothing.
No, there was nothing. We couldn't get. We couldn't even get health insurance for him.
So let's roll forward through all the years. Which times did Bennett get the best service so that he, you know, can you picture what
When he got here,
when he got to
he
Charlottesville?
never had good service in Bethesda. He was always low income, and they didn't have good people, you know,
Right.
and he was always he would go to a clinic, and they really didn't help him, and they always were overcrowded with too many low income people.
Right.
He didn't get any help at all.
So what kind of service did he get here that made you feel like that
University
you
of
and he lived
Virginia.
successfully together?
Well, I didn't know about that, but he got. We got a lot of help about the possibilities here. And when he went to the University of Virginia, they took him on for free,
Mm-hmm.
and they put him in. But then he had a horrible remission when we were first here, critical, and we got him in the hospital in time, and he had this what did I call it? He went from manic to not knowing who he was or what he was doing, you know. So he was in a bad shape at the hospital, the University of Virginia Hospital, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a long time to get him out, to get him balanced.
Right.
Because and there was the problem that he had done pretty well considering with lithium. That was his main, but they discovered through the lab that the lithium was destroying his kidneys,
Right.
and he couldn't continue with lithium. So that's when, right after the last time he had lithium, and he didn't have it, that's when he went absolutely fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it took them the longest time to balance him out at the hospital.
Right.
He was
But he stayed at the University of Virginia that whole time.
Yeah, yeah. And then afterwards, they have this group thing. And
Psychiatric group.
yeah,
Where he gets his meds.
and that was not good. He got a group where the psychiatrist was giving him too much,
Right.
and he would the side effects were bad, really bad. Like he would fall down, and I remember the morning I woke up. No, during the night I heard this thud, and I went into the bathroom. He had fallen into the tub, from the toilet into the tub.
Wow.
Yeah, and but still they didn't change his medication. So finally Bennett himself said he didn't want to go to that group anymore. He would ask to be put into another group with another psychiatrist. That's when he started. When that happened, he was much better, much better.
Uh-huh.
And he's doing fairly well, but and he says he's happy. But it also helped the region 10 that he's in. The therapist likes him and has really built up his. He said he'd never been appreciated, he'd never been loved, he'd never been respected. He didn't say loved, he just said respected, never respected. And he feels that she respects him, and it has helped him so much.
Uh-huh.
So between Region 10 and his new psychiatrist, he's doing fairly well.
Right.
So how recently did he start getting community supports in his life? Would you say 10 years ago, 1 year?
What do you mean by community support?
Well, I guess Region 10 and that kind of stuff. When did that come into his life?
After we moved here,
And that was how long ago?
5 years. We're in 5 years in July.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't get what he needed in Bethesda.
Do you think in retrospect you could have seen Bennett's manic depression earlier and done anything about it?
No, I don't think I would have. I already saw him as being introverted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, he has Asperger's. He has Asperger's as well.
Mm-hmm.
He has all the symptoms of Asperger's,
Right.
plus bipolar.
Right.
But I understand that goes together
Yes.
quite
Yes,
a
they're
bit.
very, very, very related
So
to
he-
each other. We know. Nobody
yeah.
knows why, but they do. It certainly is a one of the first questions I would have asked when you started telling me about introverted. When
Yeah.
you get focused on one thing and study just one thing, because the focus was. And when you said, well, he did well in all his subjects,
Yeah.
you're very lucky because a lot of these children get stuck in being very good at one subject and not having any interest in any other.
Mm.
So it's at the same time, your husband's death was a huge explosion in your family. You know,
Right.
Everybody changed
It
after that.
it blew me. It blew me apart,
Right.
and I could hardly stand it
Yeah. Did he?
because I was very close to
How
Jim.
did he die?
He died of alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver with hepatitis,
Ah, all right.
and he didn't know he had hepatitis.
Did Bennett know that he died of cirrhosis of the liver?
Oh yeah, that's why he's so angry at him.
That's the source
But he
of my
wouldn't have
question.
died of, the doctor said he would not have died of cirrhosis of the liver if he didn't have hepatitis.
Right.
And the reason he had hepatitis was those were the years, the 60s, when teens were having problems with their families. We had at least 5 of them come and live with us. Not all at once, but sort of serially.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, and so we all got, what do you call it? Needles to so that we wouldn't get any hepatitis. Because the kids, you know, they were, who knows which one of them had it, and the rest. But he, some reason it didn't work with Jim. That's what he got, was hepatitis from those kids, one of them, and that goes. And if that combination is a fast death, so that was the reason he died.
Would you show us your pictures?
Well, I don't have very many.
You just hold them up, you know, in front of you so that the camera gets them and you can see it.
This is the three of us.
Uh-huh. So that's Jim holding the dog and your daughter
I didn't show her that one.
and you, yes.
I'm showing her. Oh, my son is holding the dog, and my daughter is, what is she doing?
Holding the cat. Oh,
And I'm holding
you're
the cat.
holding the cat.
That's the three of us without Jim.
Right. And is this just before Jim died?
Oh no, after.
After?
Yeah, when I became a single mother.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I just,
And then now show us the picture
Then
of
this
the whole
is-
family.
when he was alive, yeah.
Can you pull it down a little bit? Ah. I like your glasses.
Yes, your glasses are now they're very popular again.
Oh, really?
Those little,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But after I had my, what do you call it, removed?
Cataract?
Cataracts removed. My doctor also repaired my not seeing very far. How do you do it, you know?
Yes, the lens repair.
Yeah.
I know what you mean from
Yeah.
so many people have
LASIK.
cataracts. But LASIK, yes, you got free LASIK surgery with
Mhm.
your cataracts.
Right. So now I hardly wear glasses at all.
That's amazing.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
None I can think of. That
I
was
think,
pretty,
yes.
pretty,
I think you've taught us a lot.
if you have.
Well, my memory isn't too good.
Well, you know, and we, because we're thinking about parents of small children,
Yeah.
we think everybody whose child has a serious illness knew about it as a child, and that's just not true. And the other
Mhm.
typical story that yours is, in terms of people who have discovered they have a serious mental illness, is going away to college. And now there's a lot of people that do brain things that say, oh no, 17, 18 is
Mhm.
another big change in your brain.
Right.
And so that would show the first evidence of
Mm-hmm.
disability.
Yeah.
There's one guy that talks about making sure that your pregnant women, children from 1 to 6, and teenagers drink clean water. And he means filtered totally.
Mm.
Because he's not the DNA that's shifted, but the other stuff that influences DNA. It was on NPR.
Oh, I heard him. He was
Yeah.
talking about the proteins and epigenetics.
Epigenetics. I knew you could do it. I've been looking for it for weeks. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, and that's
So anyway,
certainly part of the new.
what did
Well,
I
Mary
do
Rose,
in
I
my...
want to thank you very much for being so generous with your time and your story. It was really terrific. Thank you so
Yes.
much. This is going to be a really nice, resource
Right.
for people to know.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's
Yeah.
and I think we'll start to get a generational story.
Oh, there is one thing we
You know.
didn't ask though. Do you
What's the
mind?
thing?
It was on the
Yes, I knew you were still on.
the last question, or I
Oh,
believe it's
advice to young parents. Well, I tried to go back to that on. Well, no, let's try it. So our question is about, would you give advice to young parents after your experience with Bennett? Would you look back and say to young parents some advice about how, not you do it differently because you were, the circumstances you had were the circumstances you had, but
Mhm.
but the sort of advice you would give about getting help, being helpful,
everything I could, yeah.
Um,
This introversion of my son, for instance, not realizing the implications of that, and therefore not doing anything about it, except to talk to the teachers. I had a concern, obviously,
right.
but I didn't think of him as being sick.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until he was
Were
diagnosed.
some teachers more attuned to him than other teachers? Were there teachers that you thought, oh good, he's going to have a good year?
Well, they mostly gave me their concern, really, that he wasn't relating to the other children, and it was very noticeable.
But they didn't have any suggestions.
No,
You know, they were
no.
helpful to you as a parent.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Well, I still remember the time when he said, when I suggested he bring some children home, wouldn't you like to bring a friend home? He said, you don't like me, do you?
Right.
Yeah. That really tore me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never suggested anything like that again.
Right.
Yeah. But he's been very positive in many ways too. I mean, he takes here he is taking care of the house and taking care of the yard, and he never makes excuses for his illness.
Mm-hmm.
Never does.
And yet this new therapist appreciates him, values him. What was the word you used? Respects him.
Mm-hmm.
Respects him.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. He has the look of being special. It takes a conversation with him, and you need to make sure he wants to engage in it, or he doesn't continue the conversation.
Well, he doesn't really converse with people. He knows what he thinks they ought to be saying, and when they don't say what he expects, then he doesn't continue. And he won't continue. He finds fault with almost everybody.
Right.
Yeah, he still does that, and there's not.
And he did that as a child.
Well, he didn't reach out.
Well, what about with Jim?
Jim, he liked his father, and he was a lot like his father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jim was. It's funny that Jim would be a UU minister. You know, when you think about it.
Yeah.
But he was. In fact, Jim had always been looked up to because he had such a brilliant mind.
Right.
And they used to take in these intelligence tests in school,
Mm-hmm.
and he went way up, and they followed him through school.
Right.
And they shouldn't have done that. That set him apart.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not like that. So he was fighting that all the time
Right.
because he didn't want to be set apart. And that was his main problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Push off, or we'll just,
Yeah.
we'll
Just
keep
keep
asking.